Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I am your host, Cam'Ron Johnston. This is your host, Tyler Britton. What an ugly weekend, to say the least, out Saturday at Kroger Field. Kentucky gets embarrassed 31-6 by the South Carolina Gamecocks. Tyler, give me some of your thoughts about this weekend's horrific performance from the Cats.
Horrendous. Bad. Terrible. You find the bad name for it. It was it. It was bad football. I hate bad football, and I would say Kentucky fans felt the same way because Kentucky fans were swarming the gates by the end of the third quarter here.
Huge lines to get into that game.
And there were huge lines to get out of the game.
Yes, there was.
It was terrible. I mean, look, the score is what it is. 31-6. It doesn't look good. I thought there was some promise at the beginning. I was okay, like playing competitive, and I was totally wrong. I mean, we crashed there. I mean, good God, out of 183 yards for the game today, or on Saturday here, 44 passing, and that's just terrible. I will say, you know what? We'll start with the highlights here. Okay, we had a decent run game, all things considered.
Yeah, Demi,
4 quarters of football.
Great.
But 44 passing yards. Come on. Are we playing Division I football?
Barely. Offensive line sure isn't. I can tell you that.
It's just not acceptable. Under Mark Stoops' team here, this team, I was expecting this team to be a little bit more prepared. If I'm being honest here, I think this really sets the tone for late down the year here. I think this is the difference between a team that may be borderline playoff bound to a team that might be borderline able to get a bowl game. And that would be generous at this point. I mean, I have to rethink of my projections from the beginning of the year and start thinking which games are potentially going to be L's now that I thought were going to be wins, because I thought Gamecocks was going to be an absolute... I didn't think it was going to be a blowout, but I didn't think it was going to be a loss. I mean, I thought the 10-point spread was a generous spread. I'm disappointed. I don't even want to get into the stats, really. The score speaks for itself. We couldn't get anything going on offense. We kicked 2 field goals to start the first half. We couldn't score anything else in the second half. Defense couldn't stop them. It didn't seem like it at all in the second half. They're just doing what they wanted to at that point with us. Our fans quit on us, and I don't blame them. It was just terrible. I got nothing else. Reg, what did you see from the game?
Yeah, I mean, with how horrendously this team played, going into halftime, it was still a 10-6 ball game. So you're thinking, man, we just played probably the worst half of football that offense can play, and we're down 4. You think that, hey, guess what? Down 4, guys, we played terrible. Let's come out. Let's get something going. The running game was working. It was effective. The only time Bush Hamden wanted to call a running play was when there wasn't 3 down linemen. If there was 3 down linemen, he wanted to throw the ball for whatever reason. You see, there was consistently 5 and 6 guys in the box for the first 3-4 drives of that game. And he consistently wanted to, we'd run the ball, get it to 2nd and 3. Oh, let's drop back for a pass. Well, there's a sack. There's an incompletion. The play calling made no sense to start. He finally realized, hey, man, we're running the ball for about 6-7 yards a carry at the moment. Let's do that. So guess what South Carolina does to counter? They start putting 7-8 guys in the box because they know you can't throw on them. Marcus Cox couldn't have stopped you out there, Tyler. You off the edge, you would have whooped him. This guy had a PFF grade of 5. Think about that for a minute. 5. This is on a scale of 1 to 100. He got a 5. This is this guy's 7th year in college football. And he got a 5 going against an 18-year-old who was playing in his 2nd career game, first SEC competition, and you get a 5. I mean, the rest of the offensive line wasn't good either. Jagger Burton, I think, scored a 30. And normally a 30, you'd be like, the alarm bells would be sounding. Everybody would be like, oh, man, we got to figure out what's going on with this guy. 30 looks pretty solid when the guy next to him had a 5. Gerald Mincey on the right side, we were talking about him last week and about how poorly he performed. he graded the best this week. And he had 2 penalties in the third quarter. Back-to-back plays for not going on the line of scrimmage. Like, did you watch the NFL last year and Jawan Taylor get called for that time after time? Get on the line of scrimmage, buddy. If you're going to get beat, at least be on the line of scrimmage. Don't get beat after you were off the line of scrimmage and then allow a sack. I mean, we allowed 5 sacks in this game, and we were constantly under pressure. I'm not giving Brock any sort of excuse or anything like that because he played horrendously as well. I mean, he was awful. Really, the only 2 bright spots on this offense side of the ball was Demi Sumo-Karmbe and Jason Patterson. Other than that, even Eli Cox at center didn't look great, and he's been one of our mainstays throughout the years. So everything that I thought coming into this game, I knew this would be tough for our defensive line. For our offensive line, sorry. South Carolina's defensive line is amazing. That Dylan Stewart, yes, he's 18 years old, but he's already getting rumors and comparisons to Jadeveon Clowney, which was the first overall pick and an absolute freak coming out of South Carolina about a decade ago. So he's drawing those comps already. We just starting off like that and just letting mistakes compound was really the story that kind of took its toll, especially in the second half.
Could you imagine playing in college football for 7 years and you get a 5 as a senior?
I genuinely think if you put me out at left tackle last week, I give you better than a 5. And right now I am 6'1", 6'2" on a good day, and 193 pounds. And I think I might give you a better performance than what Marcus Cox did last week. And the bad thing is that Dylan Stewart, freak athlete, right? Speed off the edge. Guess what? He hasn't been in the SEC weight room for 3 years to build up that muscle, to be able to have counter moves. He was just beating him off the edge every time. At some point, start to overset and make him beat you inside, at the least. If you're going to get consistently beaten like a drum on the outside, at least start to overset and make him come inside. Maybe you give Brock a chance to roll out to the left. Instead of consistently having to step up in the pocket, he's had to step up in the pocket when he wasn't seeing ghosts, because there were sometimes he evaded from a perfectly clean pocket. It was just a lot of negative things to say about this offensive line. We were really hoping, it would start to come together a little bit, but that's probably the biggest takeaway from week 1.
Yeah, you think of the teams that do really well week after week, the Georgias of the world, Ohio States, the Michigans. Like, you think of these teams and you think about what makes them so successful, and you see the guys on the offensive line, defensive line, the skill players, everyone involved. And, the teams that do truly great, they have the players who are closer to playing on Sundays than they are on Fridays. But I can tell you right now, the Kentucky Wildcats were looking like they are closer to playing on Friday nights back in high school again. It was just abysmal. It's not excusable. I hate to talk negatively the entire time, but I'm trying to find the highlights. And really, other than the fact that we were able to have some sort of run game throughout the game, I mean, we still finished the game, with 46 attempts. I would hope that we could get, some yards on the board. We still only averaged 3 yards a carry here. Penalties, we got to be more disciplined. 11 penalties, 63 yards. It's not great. We need to be more disciplined. This is a Mark Stoops team. He's been coaching for a long time now. Let's get the culture going. Let's stay disciplined all 4 quarters. I get that frustrations come, especially later down the game, but for God's sake, I really don't know what else to say.
Bad thing is, the identity Mark Stoops has been is those penalties have racked up. We've led the SEC in penalty yards and penalties for each of the past 2 seasons. That's something you don't usually see with a long-tenured coach. Normally, that's something that gets a coach fired. I'm not
100%.
I'm not advocating for Mark Stoops' job. I'm not doing that. I'm a Mark Stoops fan. He has pulled us from the pits of depression as Kentucky fans. But, boy, he has to, as he says, he's got to pony up. He made that comment to fans last year talking about the NIL and how the fans needed to start raising more money to get better kids in here. They've done that. They've tried. They've gotten money. They've raised money. You've got to start performing better, not having 7 and 6 win seasons. I think if Kentucky doesn't beat Louisville to end the season last year, we're having completely different talks about this Kentucky program right now and Mark Stoops.
What do you think? What do you think that we need to do on offense to get us back on gear I mean, we're playing a tough team next week with Georgia. We'll get into that a little bit later. But what do we need to do to get our team back on track? Let's start with offense here. We'll transition to defense in a minute. But where do you even go from here? How do you go to practice today on Monday? Today's Monday for us. How do you transition? How do you go in the office?
It's a great question. I mean, people that are getting paid a whole lot more than I am are going to have to make that call. I mean, Mark Stoops gets paid a good amount of money for a reason. He talked about after the game how it was embarrassing. I don't know if that's a good enough way to describe that performance on Saturday. It was more, I was embarrassed, and I'm not a part of the team by any means. So I really don't know. I say you'd think that this game would have been like somewhat of a learning curve. Georgia might have a better defensive line than South Carolina. Michael Williams could be the number 1 pick in the draft. And if we couldn't handle 18-year-old 5-star freshman and Dylan Stewart, what do you think the potential number 1 overall pick in the draft is going to do to our offensive line? But at some point, we ran the ball well. I mean, at some point, you just got to look at the game in simple terms. There's 5 in the box, run the ball. There's 6 in the box, run the ball. It was working at the time. We decided not to do that. We tried to get happy with throwing the ball at the time. And at some point, you have to, guess what? They're getting a bunch of pressure through the offensive line. We didn't call a screenplay. What is to stop them from just straight rushing you every single play, down in, down out? What would you do? Maybe a draw play of some sort? Maybe a screen pass? Bubble screen? Halfback toss? Like something. There was nothing tried. They literally, they came in, they rolled over, and they let South Carolina do whatever they wanted to them. And it was a pitiful performance, and that's really all I can say about that offense. Defense, on the other hand, it was not bad. But, I mean, they also gave up in the middle of the third quarter. I felt like once that defense gave up the first touchdown in the second half, where they went up 17-6, I think the defense knew this offense isn't scoring 11 points to get back in that game, and they gave up.
I think that says a lot about the character on the defense, really on the team in general here. You can't go – I know it was looking bad here, but, you can't go into the fourth quarter, into midway through the third quarter and just quit on your team. We were talking about last week playing Southern Miss. Southern Miss just quit on them. And we were talking about, how bad of a look that was, and the coach should be embarrassed, and the players should be embarrassed, the city should be embarrassed. Like, how do you root for a team? And 1 week later, roles reversed. All of a sudden, we quit. Like, you can't quit. You got to play 4 quarters. And I think this game could have been a lot closer than it is. I'm not saying that losing by 31-6 versus losing 21-6 would have been any better or worse, but you got to have some heart. You got to try. You got to play through all 4 quarters. It'll make a difference. It's going to separate the men from the boys. It's going to separate those who are closer to playing on Fridays than the ones who are playing on Sundays. It is what it is. Gamecocks, I will say they held them to 86 yards rushing, a lot less than 100 yards rushing, but boy, they were passing the ball pretty well, pretty efficiently. So nothing glamorous on the stat board by any means, but 166 yards to our 44 looks light and day difference. So I bet you their offensive line was blocking a little better too. So
we got a good defensive line too, and they still found ways to make it work. And that's with redshirt quarterback who we had talked about. It looked horrendous last week. He looked terrible last week. He didn't really look good this week either. I mean, the defense kept him in check. The touchdown that he threw was on a miscommunication between JQ Hardaway. It looked like they were in zone. JQ, I guess he thought they were in man. He follows a guy that starts to run inside post. Guy runs a flag, runs to the corner of the pylon. I mean, touchdown, easy touchdown. Nobody's there to. Really, that was the only score in the first half that they had. I mean, you looked at that. All you could chalk it up to is miscommunication. They weren't moving the ball very well or efficiently. This defense was playing very well. I think the defense just looked around and they were like, "What's the point? Why? I don't." They gave you another once. Like I said, once they got to 17-6, I think that's when you really start to see them take their foot off the gas. And this this really sucks for a lot of reasons. Game day is now going to South Carolina to watch them play LSU. Kentucky, I heard Feinbaum say they were coming to Lexington if Kentucky won. That would have been the first time Lexington would have had college game day since 2007. What does that do for recruiting? People seeing you on the national stage, even if you would have lost to Georgia, which is what I'm sure both of you and I are going to predict, especially after this week. That's huge for recruiting, getting on the national scale. We had recruits in this weekend. How would you leave after watching that game? Would you leave inspired and be like, man, I'd love to come play for this team. I'd love to play for Mark Stoops after this win. Oh, wait, they got thrashed. Whatever I'm trying to say. I don't know. Throttled. This team's got me so crazy because I thought I felt so good coming into this game. Felt so good. I thought the offense would be solid enough to put up 17 points and win this game. Something like that. I thought that's all we needed to win this game. And guess what? I still think if this offense would have put up 17 points, they still would have won this game. I think the defense actually plays a lot better. They show more heart than they did, and they come out with this game. I'm so lost for words for how this week went.
You know what's crazy is, even going into halftime, I know it was a sloppy first half, but they were still in the game. It was 6-10 going into halftime. I mean, one touchdown. They get the ball back and start the second half and they score a touchdown. Tides turn. Now they had the lead. It was something as simple as that. Like all they do is kick a field goal, kick 2 field goals, touchdown, whatever, interception, fumble, momentum switches. They're back in the game. Even when they go down another score, it's like, okay, cool, it's 10 points, whatever, or it goes up a little bit more, whatever it was. You still have a chance to come back and can play. You can still compete. You still have a whole half in football. And you and I both know how college football works. I mean, sometimes those halves drag on because of the way the game's played. You go a little no huddle. I mean, there's a reason why Chip Kelly's offense back in the day worked so efficiently. You just march down the field. There's opportunity. I'm not saying Kentucky's that football brain. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm just saying that there's opportunities to come back even when you're down 2 scores in the second half of football. You can't quit in the second half. Yeah, I'm curious to know how Mark's going into his locker room today to get these guys back on track because they're gonna be in for a dogfight on. And I'm not, no pun intended. They're gonna be in for a dogfight on Saturday here against Georgia. We knew it was gonna be a tough game going in, regardless. I don't think we had a much of a chance for them winning. Georgia's not looking at them right now and saying, man, I can't believe we're playing Kentucky this week. No, they're going in and saying, man, I can't believe they're letting us play Kentucky this week. Georgia's licking their chops right now. They're ready to play. They've been playing good football. We'll get into that in here in just a minute. But, Cam, what are you doing to get ready for your Coach Stoops right now? You're walking in the locker room. You're saying, defense, we got to go. How are you prepping the defense to get ready for Georgia next week?
Yeah, I don't know if you necessarily have to get the defense ready. I think you just have to. You know how that works. There's 3 phases of the game. Each one has their own significance. If special teams and defense plays very well, which special teams was okay this week, we made both of our field goals. Wilson Berry actually had a pretty solid day, despite what some say 43.3 yards a punt is pretty solid. And I mean, he averaged, I think it was like 36 last year, so 43.3 per punt is fine. It's nothing great, but it's fine. Berrien Brown was not good in the return game. This was Berrien Brown's first game in his college career without a catch. If that doesn't show you like what's going on, our best playmaker on offense touched the ball twice, and they were both running plays, and I think he ended up with like negative 13 rushing yards. Your best player was a negative for you. That speaks for itself. I don't think you have to get this defense ready. I think this defense will be fine. Granted, you're playing Georgia, who's going to have one of the best offenses in the game. Are they going to give up their points? Yes, but they'd have to. This defense would probably have to keep Georgia to 1 score, 7-3, for me to feel like this Kentucky has a chance to win with how that offense looked last week. And even then, I'm not all that confident. We put the ball on the turf 4 times this week. 4 times. We got all of them back. Luckily, this game could have been a lot worse. We threw a pick 6. Gavin Wimsatt came in, and guess what? You saw his immediate ability to rush the ball, but then the very next play, you see that he cannot. He's got an absolute howitzer of an arm. But you tell him to hit the broadside of a barn, he's probably not going to hit it. I mean, there's a reason Rutgers wasn't that upset that he left. I think you're starting to see that. So right now, I think you got a little bit of a quarterback controversy of who you're wanting to play, Gavin or Brock. I think they're going to roll with Brock, especially considering, I mean, he's been going up against their defense for 3 years, Georgia's defense. If anybody has an inside look on what Georgia's defense is going to run, what they're going to call in certain looks, it should be him. Theoretically, this should be one of Brock's, what he's got the most to look forward to. He can get payback at a team that sat him on the bench for 3 years. He practiced against their first-team defense for 3 years. Same thing with Jamin Dumas-Johnson on the other side. They didn't push him out, but guess what? They let his starting spot go. Now you're at Kentucky. You've played against that offense. You know what they're wanting to do. We have 2 leaders on our team that theoretically should have an insight into what Georgia wants to do next week. Is that going to help us? Theoretically, it should. But I just think we're going to get out-athleted, and honestly, we're going to get out-coached as well.
Yeah, it's Georgia's first conference game of the season here. They're coming in 2-0. We know that they're going to be a hot team here. We know they're ranked high. We knew this was going to be the big game on the beginning of the season. This was going to probably be the first, was supposed to be the first bump in the road, so to speak. Carson Beck's looking good already, or starting off the season pretty hard with 520 yards passing, 70% completion rating, averaging about 9 yards a throw. Already has a deep bomb, has 7 touchdowns, has 0 interceptions for the year, only been sacked once. I mean, this guy looks like he's playing easy ball out there. Yep. And it's only week 2, I get that, but how do we slow them down going into week 3 here? How do we slow Georgia down? Let's say, let's be optimistic here. Let's say it's an even battle. Coach gets them right. How do we slow down Georgia going into next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have some of the recipes to do it. We have 2 really good linebackers in Jamin Dumas-Johnson and De'Aaron Jackson. I mean, those guys were not any part of the problem against South Carolina. Same thing with the front. Trayvon Ripka looked good. Dion was still being Dion. He's not going to get talked about right now because his team is not looking well. J.Q. Hardaway actually played relatively well. I know me and you had talked about how we were looking at that cornerback 2 spot to see, who comes out with that, whether it was going to be J.Q., Jansen, maybe even DJ Waller. Jansen, besides the one miscommunication in the first half, looked really well in that game against South Carolina. Granted, when you're playing Georgia, their backups are 4 stars. So it's going to be tough. Max Hairston didn't have a great game on Saturday. Look for him to bounce back. I think this defense will be fine against Georgia's offense. But fine against holding Georgia to 21 would be a great game. I mean, Clemson, they beat Clemson 34-3. And we just lost to South Carolina 31-6. So what do you expect? Clemson would beat South Carolina. I mean, they'll play later in the season, so we'll probably see that.
I mean, look, I think if Kentucky can go in there, they can do what they do on defense. They can limit some rushing yards, put some pressure on Carson here. I think this is an opportunity here for Kentucky defense to really put themselves back on the map. I'm not saying that they have to get the win. I mean, obviously that would be nice. We didn't expect them to win this game anyway. But this is an opportunity for them to gain some respect back from the fans. And what they can't do is they can't go to Georgia. They can't play Georgia here and then get obliterated and then expect the fan base to keep coming out every Saturday. It's just not going to work. I know I wouldn't go. I can only imagine the fans who are local who bleed blue here. Like they want to watch their team play. They want to support them. Much like you said earlier, you got to get some support for the NIL stuff, but they're not going to come out if you can't. It's one thing to lose. It's another thing to roll over and die. We can't do that going into Georgia. I think we can start with the defense. That's our bread and butter. I think we can continue ground and pound on the run game. Let's set up some easy plays for Brock. I think let's get the confidence back for Brock on offense. Get some rhythm throws. Like you said, mix in some screen plays. I think there's an opportunity there. Look, if we can keep this close, I'm going to say Georgia, Georgia's playing pretty well right now. They're putting up about 41 points a game. I think we can get there, hold them down to 31, Somewhere in the low 30s, high 20s. I think if we can put up between 21 and 28, make it a somewhat competitive game, I think we have an opportunity to at least show people that we're going to be competitive this year. And I think it'll build confidence inside too. Obviously a win would be great. That'll build the ultimate confidence. I think if we can just keep it close against Georgia, a team that we're supposed to get smothered by, I think, especially after last week, I think that builds some confidence within the locker room. I think that gives them the opportunity to go out there the week after and really put the hurt on someone else. So, we'll see what we can do coming up against Georgia here. It's going to be a battle, but we got to do something. We can't roll over. We can't do what we did against the Gamecocks. It'll be worse. It will be worse, Kentucky fans. 31-6 doesn't look too bad right now if we come into play Georgia and we do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, playing against Georgia, you don't ever really expect to come out with the win. This year, there was a bunch of excitement. Fans were excited. They were getting behind this team. They sold out of season tickets prior to the season starting. I saw a bunch of people selling their tickets for the rest of the season on Facebook immediately after this game. There were boo birds in the crowd on Saturday. People were yelling at Mark Stoops on his way out through the tunnel. It's it's not a good time right now. It's a real bad time to play a team that you probably know you don't have a chance to beat. This would be a great time to play, no disrespect to your alumni, Tyler, but this would be a great time to be playing Ohio. Get that confidence back. But unfortunately, we got to play Georgia and then Ohio. And you've got to put, this game is still sold out. Game is still sold out. There will still be fans there. I mean, this isn't how we pictured Kentucky going 2-1. What if they do come out with the upset? You're still 2-1 and you got to win over Georgia. Granted, did you look terrible against South Carolina? Sure. Are people going to forgive that a lot quicker if you beat Georgia in Lexington? Yes. They know what they have to do to get this season back on track. Right now, you're looking at, like you said, we're on the brink of being a bowl team. This schedule doesn't get any easier. These were supposed to be two of our easier games to start. We took care of business against Southern Mississippi, and then South Carolina came out and took care of business against us. That was supposed to be one of our easier games. We were 10-point favorites going into that game, and we lost by 25. So, gotta get the season back on the track. Stay competitive against Georgia. At least get this offense rolling at least a little bit. I don't expect this offense to come out and put 20 points up against Georgia. I'm not realistically expecting that. If they came out with more than 14 points, I'd be surprised just on the offensive end. But I do want to see this defense. This defense is supposed to be what takes us. We were talking about it during the offseason. We want this to be a top 10 defense. Show it out against Georgia. What better team to show it against than the team who has only lost to Alabama in the past 3 regular seasons? Get an important win at Kroger Field. Kentucky has 2 SEC wins at home at Kroger Field. So does South Carolina, and so does Tennessee. That's embarrassing. You got to win SEC games at home. Let's shock the world. Let's take out Georgia this week.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on the head there. Look, we lost against South Carolina at home. No one likes to lose at home. I'm looking at the schedule right now. We play Georgia. It's going to be a tough battle. Let's put that to the side for a second. After that, our home games for the remainder of the season, we got the Bobcats. I'm not going to guarantee that win right now, but that's a game that we should win. We got Vanderbilt. We got Auburn. We got Murray State, and we wrap the season up with Louisville. Sounds like a pretty decent home schedule for me. Let's go ahead and get some wins on the board. Let's go be competitive against Georgia. And I tell you what, you kind of hit on it earlier. If we can somehow pull a win out against Georgia, and we have the talent to do it, if we can somehow pull a win out against Georgia, no one's going to care about that loss. It's going to put us right back on the map. People are going to talk about how Kentucky beat Georgia. We're going to be sitting there at the end of the year. The Buckeyes did it back in 2015. They lost to a team in the second week of the season. They went on to win the national championship that year. No one talked about that game ever again. I still remember it. No one else does. No one watches football like me. So, we'll see what we can do here. I think we got some good games coming up. Hopefully we can get past Georgia here, but then hopefully we can regain our confidence enough to go play the Bobcats. And then we go into Ole Miss. So, look, why don't we go ahead and you have something else to add here?
Yeah, I mean, let's just dive into the schedule. Like you said, which of those home games are you considering like you're writing them down in pen that they're a win? Ohio and Murray State? Is that probably the only two that you'd guarantee a win at as of right now?
I mean, at this point, I won't put anything down in pen because I haven't gotten enough proof to write that check yet. But I feel pretty good about the Bobcats win. I think we'll go beat them. I hate to say it's my alma mater, but we're gonna beat the Bobcats here. I think we beat Vandy. I think it's a competitive game, but I think we beat Vandy. Auburn's gonna be a bigger battle. I think it's just gonna be competitive. I don't have a rhyme or reason behind it. I just think that Auburn's gonna be competitive. But I think we wrap up the season with Louisville. So I think we can win. I think we can win most of those. I don't think there's one that I think the only one that I have a question mark around is Auburn.
Yeah, I mean, Vandy's look really good. I know they're kind of like the punching bag of the SEC. I guess really, it's just, do you think this game was more South Carolina's a lot better than people thought they were, or are we just much worse than we thought that Kentucky was?
I think it was a trap game. I think it's one of those trap games because it was one that we came into the season saying, okay, we're going to win weeks 1 and 2, and then we're going to play Georgia. That was what everybody was saying. I think the athletes on the field, who we have to remember, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. You kind of get. You're right. But for the majority of the team, they're 18, 19, 20 years old. They've never been out to a bar. They've never had a drink. These are young kids here. Yeah, you're right. They're young kids. They probably got distracted. They got the glitz and glamour around them. They're supposed to win this week. Meanwhile, South Carolina last week was getting dogged on because they barely beat Old Dominion. So they had a point to prove. We thought we were just going to walk over them. And boy, we got punched in the mouth. And I think that could be a wake-up call early. I hope it is. Realistically, I mean, I'm looking down the schedule. We play Georgia, we play Bobcats, we play Ole Miss, we play Vandy. I think that's the toughest stretch of our season. Then we go to Florida, Auburn. Tennessee's going to be a tough game, but then we play Murray State, Texas, and Louisville. I think the toughest part here is right here, these next 3 weeks against Georgia, Ohio, and Ole Miss. Take Ohio out of it. I think it's going to be the battle, but I think once we get through those, I think we have an opportunity to, if we can win these games, I think we have an opportunity to set the tone for the rest of the year. If we lose against Georgia and then coming up against Ole Miss, God forbid the Bobcats, I think that really sets the tone the opposite way, and I don't think anybody wants to be there. I think there's going to be some serious question marks in the coaching staff if we don't come away with some of those wins. So hopefully we can do something there.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you think the rest of the season? Do you think this team can get to 6 wins? Right now, I'm struggling. I hate to put too much into one game because this is technically their first full game. But right now, I'm struggling to see them. I'm struggling to confidently say this team gets to 6 wins after how they played against South Carolina.
Look, we got Southern Miss, we got Bobcats. I'm gonna say Georgia.
You're gonna say
Murray State. Louisville. I will say that 6 games is going to be tricky. It's going to be finding one. I think that we'll ultimately either beat Texas, beat Tennessee, beat Vandy, or beat Ole Miss. I think we'll beat one of those for sure. So I think that gets us our 6th. Which one are we going to win?
After watching this team on Saturday, you think we're going to beat Tennessee or Texas on the road?
I think we're being hard on them. I think we're being a little hard, and I think they deserve to be.
Did you watch Texas just throttle Michigan this week?
Michigan's not the same team anymore. They don't have Jim Harbaugh. They don't have their quarterback from last year. They don't.
They have 2.
I'm not saying they don't have talent.
They have 2 defensive linemen going in the first round for sure. They've got the number 1 corner in the nation.
I'm not saying they don't have the talent. I'm just saying. I'm saying they don't have the culture yet. I mean, they lost their culture. They lost their culture building coach. I mean, everywhere that Jim Harbaugh went, he's built a culture. They've been a championship caliber team. He leaves them, and they're usually in shambles. It's just the Jim Harbaugh way. It's a system that he can run and he can run efficiently. But anybody else who tries to duplicate it, because that's what most cases happen, someone comes in, they try to do the Jim Harbaugh way because the ownership or the team presidents or whatever, or the school presidents, whatever, they want to keep the same system. But you can't duplicate what Jim Harbaugh does. Jim Harbaugh can run that. No one else can. So I think Michigan's in a tough spot. They're starting fresh. I'm not saying they don't have talent up there, but I also don't think that they're the Michigan of old that everybody expected them to be coming into this year. So that'd be my take on that. Not saying Texas isn't bad. Texas. I'm not saying Texas is bad by any means. I think they are a very talented team. I think they obviously deserve it of the ranking they have. And I'm not saying that that's the team we're going to beat. To be clear, I'm just saying I think one of those teams I think we'll end up getting a win of some of those question marks, and we'll get that 6th win.
Yeah, I mean, boy, I hope you're right. If you would have told me at the beginning of this, if you would have told me 12 days ago we'd be talking about hopefully getting to 6 wins, I'd be like, what happened? What went wrong? How are we already talking about this?
We were debating 9-3 and 8-4. We're down to.
I had us going. My optimistic outlook was us going 9-3. I had us winning either one of those Ole Miss, Tennessee, or Texas games. After this week, I know I'm putting a lot into one game and a lot into 4 quarters of football. This team gave up in the second game of the season. You're on ABC, nationally televised game, and this team gave up. This is probably the biggest game of some of their lives that they've ever played. And they just rolled over. At no point, there was no fight except from this defense for the first 2.5 to 3 quarters. Was the only ones who seemed like they cared.
Cam, do you think, let's say the team does not get the 6 wins this year, do you think that Mark Stoops gets put on the hot seat here?
I think he's already on the hot seat with the fans anyways, but he has, I think it's a $40 million plus buyout. Where's the university going to come up with that money? I got an answer for you. They're not going to. So he's here, whether you like it or not. I mean, he tried to go to Texas A&M in the offseason. A lot of people were upset that he even was looking for the opportunity. I really wasn't one. I like Mark Stoops, but like people have said, unless you're that Nick Saban, the Kirby Smart, you're starting to see like the end of it with Dabo Swinney at Clemson. You get to a point and you just can't keep producing at the same school. You get a level of comfort, and I feel like Mark Stoops is very comfortable right now, and that's not a good thing. I feel like he spends more time trying to promote his bourbon line than he does making sure, we're out here with the X's and O's. This is the 4th different offense coordinator we've had in 4 seasons. At some point, Mark Stoops has got to look in the mirror and be like, hey, buddy, it might not be their fault every time. All of those guys, Liam Cohen's in the NFL, Rich Scangarello's in Vegas right now with the Raiders. Liam Cohen, what they put up, like the Bucs you should know this as a Commanders fan, what did the Buccaneers put up yesterday? 37 points? So obviously,
I think I turned that game off. So
I mean, obviously, it's not an X's and O's problem for Liam Cohen. Why is it not working here at Kentucky? Is it just coincidence? I don't think so. At some point, there might have to be a change in leadership. Again, I'm not advocating for that after one game, but you will have to start looking at that throughout the season if things continue to go how they are.
I mean, look, I'm not going to advocate it for just yet, but I will say that another Kentucky legendary coach, John Calipari, just took off too. I mean, this may be the year that we lose 2 good coaches, and not that they're not because they're bad coaches, just because sometimes you need a new voice in the locker room. If you haven't gotten the job done here, you're in the SEC. The expectations are going to be there. You can't be the bottom of the barrel every single year. Not to say we're in last place. I mean, right now technically it shows last place, but we shouldn't be the worst team in the SEC every year. It's just not. You don't do that. You don't keep your job for doing that. You don't do that in the NFL. You don't do that in college. You don't stay at the bottom and expect to keep your job. So I think we're far from that. I'm not calling for his job whatsoever. Let's go to Georgia. Yeah, I'll go ahead and give my prediction here. I don't think it's going to be a positive one. I think I think we can try to be more competitive. I'll try to be optimistic here. I think we're going to put up 24 points. I just don't think that we're going to match how many points that they're going to put up. I said I was going to be optimistic.
That's
24 points is
That's way more than
three touchdowns and a field goal. I think that's a fair score. I think that's something that we can put up. I think that's something our run game can put up. If we can stay consistent with it, throw a couple screen passes into it, kick a field goal, I think we can put up 24 in a college football game, and especially if we can have a wake-up call. But I will say, I think Georgia probably comes out at 38.
Are you saying this offense scores 24 points? Not including like maybe a defensive touchdown, a turnover where they get the ball at like the 10.
I'm saying 24 points. I'm typically talking about how the offense gets it, but that being said, I mean, 24 points comes in all shapes and sizes here. It could be a touchdown pass, it could be a touchdown run, it could be a block kick, it could be an interception. It could be someone disconnecting their game console and simulating the game. I don't know. However that goes.
Yeah, I'm going to say I saw the spread. It was 22.5, I believe, in Georgia's favor. The over-under, I believe, is at 45. I'm taking Georgia, obviously. I'm not taking them with the spread. I would take Kentucky with that spread. 22 points is a lot in an SEC game. But then again, South Carolina did just cover that last week when they were 10-point underdogs. I got Kentucky losing this game. I'm going to say 27-7. I'll say the defense shows up a little bit. 27-7. And I'm going to say that 7 is a garbage time touchdown. That's something that'll happen in the fourth quarter. I'd love to be wrong. The only way
I may be optimistic. You're disrespectful.
From what I saw last week, that was
You're a Kentucky fan?
From what I saw last week, that was disrespectful for them to make me sit there and watch that for 4 quarters.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but you know,
here with my dad, having to watch that game for 4 quarters. It took 3 hours of my valuable time to watch that. I'm going to be disrespectful this week. I hope they play this in the locker room and they clip me and put it on their TikTok when they beat Georgia. I hope that's the outcome. I would love nothing more than for me to just be some clown, talking head clown on SportsCenter talking about how this team has no chance and they came out and won and kicked Georgia's ass on Saturday. That would be awesome. I would love to be that guy. Look, this face right here. Clip this face. This stupid face. Clip it. And go out and win the game against Georgia. And I will, whatever you need me to do. Whatever.
Well, we'll wrap up on that note there. Reg is going to end this podcast on a disrespectful note. I can't believe he's saying that. I'm going to go on an optimistic note. Look, if Kentucky ends up winning this and they go out to a nice steak dinner, I hope they call me up and I hope they say, Tyler, you're invited out. Leave your dummy friend over there at home because he's disrespectful. I hope they say that, but we'll wrap up with that.
And it ends with a Kentucky win. That's all I want. If I'm the reason that they win, I'm not going to say I am, but boy, if you send this to whoever you want. If you know people inside the Kentucky locker room that this will irritate them, send it to them. Clip this out. Tell them they're only scoring 7 points against Georgia. That might, guess what? I didn't even say that 7 points was going to come on offense. That might be a Berrien Brown punt return touchdown. That might be a Berrien Brown kick return touchdown. That might be a Jamin Dumas-Johnson pick 6. I feel more confident in this defense scoring points for us by creating turnovers or putting us in good field position, block punt, something of that nature, than I do this offense having a 8 to 12 play drive of 60-plus yards. Hopefully I'm just overreacting to 1 week. I really hope that's what it is. Hopefully they come out there and I got to stick my foot in my mouth after all this that I just said. I want Kentucky to win. Go Big Blue. That's all I got to say about this. We'll leave you guys on that note.